Okay, hello. Welcome to the 7th letter in the Majuscules series. So this is a capital G. As per normal, my X height is 5mm, so the total height for my capital will be 15mm. Because this is a G, it is going to be slightly taller, but we'll stop and I'll go through that really quickly. So as per normal, my pen holder is an oblique holder, in which I have a Leonard Principal extra fine nib with some watercolor ink on. Watercolor ink is not going to give me the finest hairlines again, but it is going to dry nice and quickly for me, so that I can annotate it really. I don't know why this is so thick today. Okay. So in AG, we are looking for a few things. Number one, obviously to bisect that space. Number one is that it is a larger letter. So when I've got my X height here being 5mm, just put that right there, 5mm. The normal height of a majuscule is either 1.5 times or 2 times the X height. Mine is 2 times. So right in here is 10 for me, adding for a total of 15. I've then got another 10 coming right down to here. I think there's only 2 or 3 majuscules which excuse me, call for a much larger letter, a G being one of them, a J is another one, and a Y and a Z I think are the only other 2, but variations might pull some differences in there. So I think this is dry about now, which is wonderful. So we should see right here that we have a contained oval right here, give or take, which should be, as best pos, bisected right here in terms of negative space. So this little tail, you see that I started and it wasn't quite forward enough for the loop that I produced, so I moved it forward a little bit. Not a problem, as long as it goes into that space a little bit, it'll look like it is bisecting that space. So the top half of my negative space is roughly the same as my bottom half. Okay, the whole side of a G is an unfinished oval in itself on top of another unfinished oval. So realistically, I think I'm in frame over here. I am I? Yes. So over here, if I just go through it, I've got a oval that goes like that, which is where I start my letter. Clean off my nib before it dries. There we go. Leading into an unfinished oval, which would take it wider. Similar to that. With then another oval just on the bottom of it somewhere here. You should be able to see that all of these are along the slant line, and you do have more or less a universal line of beauty going on right here. So the middle third of my section right here. Can I go that way? Can, if I move it over slightly. There we go. Just be careful because I've got a candle on the desk. There we go. Is parallel to the slant line. And that's the roughly the middle third. If yours is more like a half, not a problem. Seen it in a number of ways. So this bisection right here, put that right here as a circle, that should be as close to 90 degrees as possible. Purely because when you have an intersection, so along the slant line, if you have an intersection that is 90 degrees or as close as possible to it, bear in mind that we don't have pure straights up in here because we are constricted to a slant line of 54 or 55 degrees. So the closer you can get to 90 degrees is the more balanced each of these spaces is going to look. Yeah, so we should be able to see roughly even spaces on any crossover right here, if we were to draw a perfect circle, which I have attempted my best. All right, so we've got intersecting ovals. We've got points for flourishing. We've got one on the left over here and one at the bottom. Bear in mind that there's very little flourishing that can be done on the right. The only flourishing parts that you've got would be inside of this contained oval right here, because as you see, everything else is outside of the shape. So we could put, I'll just do this really quickly in monoline right here. So we could do something like this. So you've got a contained loop in here. So again, you can see, I'm going to run out of colours. There we go. Cool. So you can see in here that this, it'd be helpful if I opened it the right way up. There we go. That this bit right here is still bisecting that space. So I've still got roughly the same amount of space either side within this contained oval right here. Because that is intersecting over here, it means that my space is effectively shortened, that I can put this loop in. So the loop that I have, A, is on the slant line, which it must be, otherwise it will look like your letter is leaning. And it's also as close to the center as I can get. So from here, I've got roughly equal distance from all sides. And I've also tried to eyeball the amount of space above here, so above my loop, to equal roughly the amount of space below it before we get to that universal line of beauty. That's just so it looks as contained as possible, like as well situated and deliberately placed as possible. We can obviously continue this flourish right here. I mean, I think flourish till your heart's content here with that left hand flourish, as long as it does not intersect in this area. If you've already got a flourish here and the space is already bisected, you could either carry on that bisection and do something else, but do not return to this section. That is already bisected, it's already fulfilled. The bottom is also an area for flourishing right here. I've pointed out already that we've got a contained oval. It's up to you where you want to stop. You can just put a terminus dot in here, or we can turn it into something else. It's really up to you what you want to do with it, but it is a flourishing option. You can cross should you need to. So if I make the top flourish a little bit narrower and give myself a bit of an unbalanced letter. Cool. So I've tried to shunt that up so it's much, much lower. So originally I'm coming right down here, but my one over here is much higher. So I've potentially got the option, if I wanted, of bringing that all the way back around. So don't be afraid to go over the lines that you've got, as long as you are always bisecting a space. So this space is bisected right here by that line. And then you've also got, I'm gonna need more colors, there we go. You've also got this space right here, which is being bisected by this flourish on the bottom. Okay, so a G is normally done in 1 stroke or 2 strokes. You've seen, I think I prefer to do it in 2, just so that I can get a very, very sharp defined point on here. It is possible to do it all in 1. You can also, should you want to, I think I'd rather do this. Oh, I've knocked the thing. Should you want to, you can start it from the top. So you can start it from a 12 o'clock. I think I'm still in frame now. It's harder for me to see when it's on the far side. There we go. So you could start it from the top. So you could just start straight into your oval swirl. As soon as you stop over here, so this invisible guide right here along the slant line will tell you how far that you can go over. If you go further than that line to the right, it's going to look too top heavy. Normally this shouldn't be an issue, because in most cases in G's you are doubling back on yourself. But we could, for example, continue and flourish straight through. I think I'm going to need a little bit more ink for the bottom, purely because it is a long, long line. Far too long, seemingly. Alright, so blobs aside, let's put that straight into there. You can, I think I've roughly bisected that area, so I don't think I need to touch it. But you can just continue this flourish on also. So if you wanted more in, not a problem. I'm not so happy with this area, purely because I feel like it's too wide. I much prefer a smaller area. It's almost like that's a faux lead-in stroke up here. So my lead-in stroke down here and over here are far too wide for my personal preference. If you wanted to change the shape of your top parts and say instead, okay, so instead of this formation, we could have a look at, okay, everywhere now. We could have a look at doing a contained oval up here. And then that would mean if that oval is fully contained, so what I mean by that is that the loop comes completely the way around. So you'd have a much larger area. And then keep it very, very slim going down. That's totally possible. And then you'd have a little bit of space to bisect and play with here. That's absolutely possible. If you wanted to just slightly change it, so it would mean moving your universal line of beauty up much higher. Mine just stays, you can see here, within the 5mm, but up here I'm at 1.5 times the X height, so that's at about 7 or 8mm. Yeah, so there's my 5, and that puts me about halfway into the next box, so that altogether is about a 7 or an 8mm. Okay, there's a lot of fun to be had with a G. It is a big, big letter with a lot of potential for flourishing. G is, you've got to have a lot of ink on your nib for a G. You're doing a lot of mileage with a G. And you've got to have the appropriate amount of space for a G. It does depend if you're doing an address, particularly when you have multiple lines of text, that if you have a letter that is long, like a G, I should be able to just move this a little bit, there we go. So if you have a letter that is long like a G, it may be worth, if I just do this really quickly, it may be worth obviously completing the top bit because that will be on your line. It may be worth just stopping here, completing your second line of text, and then finishing off what you can get in or get away with on the bottom. When you are doing multiple lines of text, the bottom line always takes precedence over the top line. So any flourishes on particularly descenders should be happening priority on the most bottom line of text, and then going up. If you have a descender and don't have the space for it, then you need to cut that descender short. So if we've got another capital, just about fit that in there. So if you've got another capital right here, then there's no reason why you can't put in a suggestion of a finish of a G, but that capital on the lower line must take precedence, which often means long letters like a G or a J or a Y do often get cut short on things like envelopes. So I hope that was really, really clear. I've tried to go through it as quickly as possible for a G, but it's one of my favourite letters. So give it a good go. It can take a while to get it right, but there's a million variations you can do. Thanks a lot.